Hey, this is Jeremy with Avocatus, and today's instructional video is going to be the next step in installing our Galil barrel, specifically your Avocatus Galil barrel. And so just kind of recap a little bit. Up to this point, we have installed our Avocatus barrel into our threaded receiver, which in this case, most cases, it is a Tortort receiver. That's who we tend to use. And it being threaded had to be torqued to spec. Then from there, I showed you guys how to strip your bolt, so that way we could force match it. Then we went into force matching our bolt to achieve the proper headspace. There was I had a question from somebody, and there was concerns about removing material from the back of the lugs that would potentially harm your the case hardening or the heat treat of the bolt. Well, I can tell you, if you've built enough AKs, that's how you force match them. It's the same process as force matching a bolt action rifle. You are removing material from the back of the lugs so that when it goes into the lockup in the cycle of operations, you're achieving the proper headspace, or to achieve the proper headspace. It's not like you're removing 15 or 20 thousandths from that surface. It takes a long time, yes, because you're trying to be tedious, because if you go too far, you kind of screwed yourself, and there are ways to fix it, but I won't get into that. Nonetheless, the that thin candy shell that you're worried about, it soaks in a little bit further than potentially what you may be worried about, what your concerns are. And frankly, that's force matching a bolt. That's how it's done. And so anyhow, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the next step, which for me, everything's a foundation. You start at the base. I don't like taking a fully populated barrel and just installing it into something. I start from the receiver and I build all the way out. And that lets me ensure that everything is done properly and appropriately, and it's adjusted and potentially fabricated or whatever, and it's done so right the first time, and then we move on to the next step. Well, the next step in this case is before we can drill our gas port and press on our lovely, it's backwards, our gas block. Don't do like I've done a million times. It's kind of an inside joke around here whenever we're pressing on a gas block, is that, hey, don't forget to put on the handguard retainer. Well, there's nowhere, there's no slot essentially for your handguard retainer to go, and that's done on purpose. I don't like pre-drilled barrels, and I don't like pre-slots if I can avoid it. Plus, it's threaded, so by the time this thing gets threaded and torqued, you have to do that stuff yourself. Well, this allows us to fit our handguard, properly, but most importantly, with precision in a way that it's not gapped, it's not sloppy, it's nothing like that. And I don't like gaps within reason. So I wanted to show you guys how to do that, and that's what this video is about, and I appreciate your attention. Thanks, y'all. Okay, so let's get started. In this episode, we're going to go over how to install our handguard retainer, how to make the slot for that, how to measure it out, and all that kind of stuff. Where does it need to go? Because right now we don't have anything. Well, this is also a good time to ensure that your handguard is where you want it to be. And what I mean by that, and I've already kind of done the work to this. First things first, take your handguard and pull the springs out of the back of it. Let's get a couple of pliers, a pair of needle nose pliers, and just pull the springs out. Now you're not fighting the springs while you're trying to install all of this in and measure it out. So take the springs out, make yourself make life easier on yourself. The other thing is, and this is an arm. This is set up for a bipod, and so because of that, this is under kind of spring tension. The way that it's made, it's not. It's two pieces that are held together by these metal straps. Okay, so that means that here there's a little bit of give. There's some spring in there, and so that needs to be able to fit into this retainer here. So for this hardware, for this to fit, and I've already fixed this because when they made this handguard, they were slightly off, and I'm over exaggerating, but these two pieces, when they were put together, they weren't flat. And what was happening was it was causing an excessive gap. It was damn near 1/8 of an inch of gap in there. And so what I just, no kidding, with a flat file, I went in and no kidding, let's take this out, I'll show you. So no kidding, I went in and filed all this down and just take the time and do it right, and and kind of evened it all out a little bit. And you still have to squeeze this to get it to fit, but now it's where I want to be. I'm comfortable with this. Later on when we go to install it, we'll have the springs in there, and then we can fight and play with that. But so having this installed, now we can go ahead and when we put our handguard on and put it where it needs to go, now we don't have any issue. We don't have anything. This is how these dimensions are going to stack up down towards our muzzle. So now we can go ahead and making sure that this is open, we can install our handguard retainer, and then put our handguard retainer. And obviously it's not going to close because we don't have the slot. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. So now, if this is where the handguard retainer, let's say we had the slot, we were able to lock it down, all that kind of stuff, and we were good to go there, this is where we would be able to, this is how it would look. And that's what we're trying to get at, is like, okay, how is this going to look? How is this going to fit together? And another thing you might even do is test out your gas tube, right? Make sure, okay, does this look right? Does it look like it's fitting? Does everything look appropriate before we proceed to the next step? So if you just go on and throw in your gas block and then you figure something out, well, shoot, you've already drilled your gas port. Like, yeah, so let's do it right and fix it before we move to the next step. So with this all installed like it needs to be, this is where we take our trusty silver pen. And I know this is super scientific, but we're doing science. We'll just butt this up here on the front, and I've got this braced into myself. I'm holding it all tight. I don't want anything to move. I want this exactly to be where it's going to be, because this is where it's going to end up going. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the back. I'm marking the barrel, and I'm putting this Sharpie. You can see that I'm also making a line. I'm getting this as exact as I can. Okay, and so we have a line drawn fore and aft on top of our barrel. So that's where that needs to be slotted. Now there is another. There's multiple ways of doing this, but I'm trying to show you how to do it with, assuming that you're Johnny Haversack and you are building this on your kitchen table or in your garage or something like that, and you don't have an entire shop with a whole bunch of spare parts and everything like I do. Because one way of doing it is you have a spare or dedicated handguard retainer that this lever, this pin, if you will, is taken out. Well, then you could just use that as a drill guide, right? There's potential there. You just drill through there and do it that way. There's other tools that have drill guides, right? That different fixtures and jigs and things like that give you a drill guide for that. I don't like doing any of that. What I like doing is saying, hey, in this case, for this gun and these parts going together for the very first time, this kind of deal, like all of these dimensions, right, and those tolerances that stack, I would rather have this all tight, and this is where I know it wants to be or where it should go. Then when I remove this, I get this out of the way, and I can take all this off now because I've measured it. That is where I want my handguard retainer to go. And again, when I'm making the marks, I'm doing so on the back of where it sits on the barrel, not on the back, you know, nothing like that. And maybe I don't mean to talk down to you guys or anything like that. I just want you to fully understand what's going on. So we're marking here and here at the top of our handguard retainer. And if we look at where this is, you know, we can, and I'm doing this multiple ways here, but if we look at where this is, think about where you know, this lever is a pin that's going through there. I'll even illustrate here. So I'm a bit of an artist. I actually grew up, I wanted to draw, I wanted to be a comic book illustrator. I was going to go to art college and decided to go to the Marine Corps instead. You know, figure that out. But I can freehand a straight line. I've got pretty good eyes, and then taking that into, you know, mechanic world and all that kind of stuff, aviation maintenance and whatnot. I've got calibrated eyeballs. Point is, we draw this line, and that is essentially, if you look inside here, when you close that lever, that's where the pin rides, right? Directly on top of this. So I mean, to visualize this, if we go and install, okay, essentially underneath here, underneath this line is where we need the slot. Now, is it going to be this way? Is it going to be this way? Are you going to cant it 10 degrees? You know, so this is where we also, this is where it can get a little artistic, if you will, okay? And I know that there's a bunch of different ways. I'm just showing you my way. But let's do something real quick. If I go, and what I want to show you here is center line, because I need to know the top here of my barrel, so that I can figure out, you know, hey, where is this going to end up when it's all installed? Okay. So we've got this installed. We double check. Yeah, our lines, everything looks good. But let's do something else. We could, and you can measure this out. I don't need to, but I'm about to show you some of that too. But if you drew a center line on the top of your handguard retainer, check this out. Let's take that center line off the top. Let's take it to the front edge of the handguard retainer, right? Now we take that same line. You can look at where that line is and then make a mark on your barrel. And I'm just going to bring that out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and bring it out a lot of bit, just for illustration's sake. Okay, so this is giving us an X. You know, X marks the spot for the top of our barrel. We're going to do the same thing later on when it comes to gas block time. But I'm just going to go ahead and continue this out. Okay. So this way you can see I have a center line on the top of my barrel. I have two lines that are marking fore and aft of my handguard retainer. And then somewhere in between those lines, I need to figure out where this slot needs to go. Cool. If you're fancy like me and you got a set of calipers, that's great. You can go in and you know, you might even, you know, do one of these numbers where you get you want to check from the leading edge here, and we say, okay, if I put this in the center, I know it might be difficult to see this, we can use our calipers here to measure from this shoulder and say, okay, if I go to the center of the pin, I'm just going to call it a pin, we go to the center of that, that's the distance that I want to measure out with my calipers. Well, and I always look from both sides. Check her out from behind too, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that looks pretty center. And so that's telling me, if I'm reading my calipers here, I've got, looks like one, let me look at this, get my eyes to work here. 188, yeah, 188 thousandths. And so, you know, okay, well, if I want to go that way, I can use the same thing off my calipers. You know, I can either butt this up against the leading edge where I drew the line, okay? I want to make sure that I'm staring down the top of this. And it's still at my 188. I've got that about so. And I can make a reference line. Okay. All right, so that's a caliper method, all right? And another way of doing it is, no kidding, stick the metal, like uninstalled, next to it, all right? Well, let's do it this way. Whoops. I'm a lefty. I'm wrong-handed, if you will. So if you stick it this way, you'll notice, not on the lever side, but on this side, we've got, ta-da, we've got this pin, okay? And we made our little center line there. Well, check it out. If we look at where we made our reference lines, fore and aft, make sure you're looking straight down on it. But we can see, and I'm going to go right-handed here, we can take a look and see if I line those up from my line to my reference line, yeah, that looks pretty dang close, right? So whether you're using calipers and measuring off the leading edge and making a reference mark, or, you know, maybe you don't have calipers, maybe you're not a machinist, have a machine shop and do all that kind of fancy stuff. You just have a handguard retainer and the one Galil SAR kit of parts that you have. That's why I'm trying to show you this way. Just measure off what you got, make your mark. All right, that's where we need to start. So I know here's the center of the top of my barrel. I have, you know, where my handguard retainer wants to go, and I know that I want to put a slot in there. Okay, next trick. If you don't already have these and you're building, you really need to get a good set of jeweler's files. I use them all the time, but I'm also touched in the head. So now we need to start making our slot, and your round file out of your jeweler's files is the best thing to get started on this. Don't just start in there with a rat tail file or round file and you start just sawing away, okay? Because I'll tell you right now, what's going to happen is it's going to get off. It's going to start sliding one way or the other. We need to get ourselves a foothold. And the best way to do that is with this fun little freaking round jeweler's file. And really, specifically, just the tip. Know what I'm saying? Like, just use the tip to get it started. This is going to start to mark a line. And so I'm going to cant this off. And I'm gonna choke up on this because I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing. So, no kidding, I want to very, very deliberately controlled. I want to start my line here, and so I'm just going to start it with my round file here, and it's going to take a little bit because this sucker is nitrided. So talk about thin candy shell. It is super hard. And I've got to get through that. But I can discern, and you know, I've got this fat Sharpie line. Well, you can see, maybe you can't see. Hopefully, you can see my bright mark that I'm making is in the middle of that, right? I'm splitting the difference here. So I just want to use this, get this cut in, get it started. I'm also, if you're noticing how what I'm doing here, I'm actually bracing the file with the tip of my thumb. Okay, this is just you know, it's a control issue. Instead of letting it, you know, kind of slide along, I'm holding on to the barrel with one hand, and I'm kind of bracing it with my thumb. And yeah, you know, you're getting a little bit of filing on your thumb, but you know what? Harden the F up. We're building guns here. All right, now I'm starting to get a little bit of bite. It's not just because this is really hard, it just kind of slides. Now I'm starting to get a little bit of bite into there. I can feel this this file is starting to do, you know, it's slowly doing its business. So just, you know, do like you guys always do. Tell her, give her the tip. And then, you know, work it up a little bit. We just need to get it started before we start working into our larger round file. I don't particularly like drilling these. Again, you know, I'm not in a rush. I want it to be done a certain way, and there's so much more control with hand tools and filing, right? Than just you know, I'm not. Hey, if you want to drill it and do, you know, and that works for you, that's cool too. I'm not talking S. I'll also tell you though that as I'm doing this and I go to test fit it, and I'm seeing if it'll work, like I can adjust with the files to make it tighter or looser before we get it to its final where it needs to go. Okay, so as I'm working the file here, understand that my file is tapered, right? So if I'm filing from this side, it's more likely that I'm removing more material from the left than I am the right. So let's also make sure that we spin it around and we kind of even out our slot. We want that slot to be uniform. And so make sure that we're hitting it from both sides, you know what I'm saying? So as you can see, my little round file from my jeweler's set is now starting to make a pretty decent slot here. We want to keep in mind our center line, and you know we're not cheating off to one side, right? And which is going to make our handguard retainer canted. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it as. That's why I draw this reference line to give myself a nice reference of where the top of the barrel is. Okay, so as we're looking at our slot, I'll set this for you to hopefully be able to see. You know, I've got a nice line cut in. It started, and let's just see where we're at here. I have a couple of round files, otherwise known as rat tails, and I have one that's a little more aggressive than the other. And so, but this is typically what I like to use. So let me see what this gets, see how this bites. And sometimes I just like to kind of feel this out a little bit. Now you can see this start to open up. Again, I was just kind of centered on the original slot made from my other file. But this is how we're going to open this up and make this handguard retainer fit. So now I don't need to guide this with my thumb, if you're noticing. Now I can set the tool into the cut, and you know, just kind of I'm actually trying to feel with the tool. I'm trying to feel where that slot is, okay, and you know, concentrate on like or focus on how this is cutting, okay. You can kind of use the tool to feel out the material, how it's removing the metal, how it might be sitting. If you feel a little more pressure on one side than the other, then perhaps you have it canted. Maybe you're trying to do that. Maybe this is starting to get off to one side, and then you need to cheat on the other side. You can feel that with the tool. You just pay attention to it. And then you can fix your happy little mistakes, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to see if I can start to feel it catch. So we want to line up as you start to pull the handguard retainer back, and then you apply pressure to the lever. So right there, boom, it's caught, right? The lever is starting to work in, okay? And I can look at my reference lines and just kind of see, okay, where is this starting out at? Is this where it needs to be? And then we can adjust for fire. Okay, I want to look down the top. I want to look down the top of my barrel. I want to reference my center line, and I want to see, okay, how even are we on this side versus this side? And I can go in and freshen this bad boy up. And I'll even continue it on through. Okay. So we can use our reference lines. We can see, okay, looking at this, how even are we? Have we removed an equal amount of material from both sides? Okay, and let's probably leave this off now. Let's do another check. Okay. Now, I noticed, again, looking at our reference, you can see that this is starting to cant. And that's because we have a little bit more material removed from the left side. So this is going to want to follow the slot that we created, right? So that's why I like to do this a little at a time. Then I can kind of cheat on this side and even it out. Also, be careful that you are perpendicular to your center line. You don't want to start doing one of these numbers unless you're obviously intending to do that and you're trying to remove material that way. Okay. I can cant it a little bit if I'm trying to take material out from the corners, right? But really, just keeping perpendicular to your line, we can just move this material. Okay, you see our lever's starting to throw a little bit more. I have corrected in that we're nice and straight now. Our center line is good. So I'm happy with that. Okay, so another one of the tools that I like to use that comes in really handy to this is a half round. Okay, so it's flat on one side, it's round on the other side. And this, I tell you what, this I use this quite a bit, but particularly when it comes to and because this is a jeweler's file, it is, I can polish with this. Okay, I do quite a bit. So when we can use this half round, no kidding, like you can stick that sucker in this slot and just work this half round, and it's going to be much less aggressive. Like I've got it cut, and I removed, we moved material with our rat tails, but now I can kind of get in here, and this is where we can really make adjustments, minor adjustments, but it's the little things, it's the details, right? So, if you stick it down flat in the trough, right, we're just digging deeper down in the same direction. If we need to tighten it up and we need to go that way with our handguard retainer, well, cool, take your half round and just angle it to where, okay, and a lot, I can use my thumb to brace this, but now we're using the half round to open up on the back end, okay? Instead of removing material uniformly across there, Now we're removing material from this shoulder, if you will, and we're doing so at a bevel, which means that's going, we're changing the bottom line, if you will, of where this pin is going to cam into. And that's where we want to, get this nice and tight. So we can sit here and make adjustments with our half round, and at the same time polish this out to remove the more aggressive tool marks from the rat tail. The rat tail was good, for what it needed to do. But now we need a little bit more finesse, if you will. Let's give it a check anyway. If you ever have an idea that you want to check it, stop and check it. Okay, so now what I want to do is, I've got this started, and I'll show you another little trick here. Get ourselves our mallet or whatever, and I've got the lever. It's already, it's already biting. It's already starting. Okay, it's where, But what I want to do here, see if I can get this to work, is I've got that started, and I'm just going to give it a little tap-a-roo with my rawhide mallet. So then when I pull this off, I'm looking for bright marks. I see here and I see here. So that is where my pin in here is engaging and contacting the metal, okay? So again, you can see in between the lines, and I'd say I'm fairly well centered, right? And that's why I advocate showing you all, make sure this cam's okay. That's another thing you got to look out for when doing these. Make sure that this will cam all the way over. You look at this one. This one is pretty stiff, right? That lever is starting to contact this ear on our handguard retainer. So be careful about that too. But that's why I want to show you guys, not the easy way, not the shortcut, nothing like that. I want to show you, use hand tools and take your time, because, you build these guns right, they'll last generations. And, the reason why we have these guns, right, is there's people that don't want these to last generations. They don't want your generations to have them. That's why we're here. Oh, look at that. So, let me get my lines back here. But we have handguard retainer. It's nice and tight. There's no wiggle whatsoever, right? Once that sucker cams into place, it is solid. As a matter of fact, it's kind of tight. Let's see. Use the handle of one of these here. Normally I just use the appropriate tool for the job, but who would want to do that? Now we have that done. Let's take a look here. And obviously I haven't put my springs back in there, so that is something that'll have to get added. Let's just check fitment before I go any further. Make sure that everything's nice and where I want it to be. There you have it. There is a fitted handguard with handguard retainer, and the markings. Let's do this. The markings that you know, that I made for reference. You guys can see, right? So nice center line. That's where our pin goes through. We see the marks fore and aft, and the proof's in the pudding. Keep it tight. You know what I'm saying? Hey, if you like what I'm doing, and you know, these instructional videos are just you know, listening to me run my mouth and stuff and show you guys some things, please give us a like, comment, subscribe, you know, share it, do all the things. I really appreciate, you know, everyone's support. You guys rock. So thank you for that.